Good morning, councillors. Good morning, executive. Good morning to those joining us in the gallery and in the digital gallery today. It's my pleasure to declare the ordinary meeting of Tuesday, 19th of September 2023 open. And in doing so, I once again pause and acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we meet and upon which our region are formed, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and congratulate them on their continued nurture of culture. Councillors, I note a full attendance of councillors today, and therefore there are no apologies for today's meeting. And it gives me great pleasure then to welcome to the meeting this morning Pastor Josh Cox from Beaudesert Baptist Church to lead us in prayers. Thank you, Josh. You've shared with us regularly. It's great to have you here in person this morning, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, Mayor and councillors and executive and staff as well for the opportunity to be able to share. I've had a few rather difficult conversations with people recently in the last couple of weeks. One was yesterday with a marriage where it looks like it's pretty much on the going to fall apart. And the week before that was a conversation with a guy who was in the process of VAD, voluntary assisted dying. So it was my first encounter with that, and it came out of the blue, and it was a bit confronting, particularly given the Phil's family there, and it was a fairly sensitive sort of nature. And also the involvement I have at the high school as president of the PNC, and with all the things that have happened recently up there. So. And I wrote about this in my little article on the Beaudesert Bulletin, which will be out on Friday. But I think he's been around hope and around hopelessness, and so I just want to read two verses, or actually one verse, and then and to pray. This is the psalmist in Psalm 42. He says, "Why are you downcast, O my soul, and why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall yet praise him for the help of his countenance." And so our hope can be found in God as we look to him for some answers in life, and sometimes it is difficult for people around about us. So you need to unite together in support and love and care, and direct people to where there is hope, and I believe hope in God. So let me pray and commit this meeting to God. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. It is a glorious day and a blessed day, and you've given to us this time in which not only to enjoy, but to work. Work is good. It's good for us and good for society. And so we pray to you, Heavenly Father, for this meeting and for the councillors that sit here and the executive and those involved in it. We pray to you, Lord, that you'll guide and direct the proceedings, the processes, the decisions that are made. We also pray to you, Lord, too, for our community, the people who are within it, ourselves, our families, our friends, our neighbours, those we don't know. Those, dear Lord, that we have opportunity to invest in and input into, and particularly those we think this morning who are facing hopelessness, who are struggling in their relationships and struggling within themselves. And so we pray to you, Heavenly Father, that we would know what it is to encourage them, we would know what it is to point them to you, the great source of hope and of purpose and of life and identity. And so we just commit this meeting particularly now to you in prayer, and we ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen indeed. Thank you, Josh, for sharing with us today. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for that timely reminder of the important leadership role you play and that work you do with those at the difficult times in life in our community. I know you have other things to attend to today, but I also wish you well as you're taking a short break. Next, you sit in for a while for sure, but as you take some well-earned time to enjoy a holiday next week, we wish you all the best with those travels as well. Thank you. Councillors, we have no advised questions for public question time today, so we move to item 6, our declarations advised for today. Councillors, I'm advised of 2 declarations at the moment and 1 advice. One of those declarations relates to item 11.2 with Councillor McGuinness, and the advice will be explained at that time by Councillor West. and Councillor Hay has advised of a declaration concerning item 12.1, which we'll deal with before we go into close. Thank you. No other declarations? Okay then, councillors, we have no announcements or mayoral minutes for today's meeting, and we have no arranged deputations or presentations of petitions. So we come to item 9, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. And councillors, I have a recommendation to table that I'll seek a mover for, that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on 5 September 2023 be adopted. I'll seek a mover. Councillor Hay, thank you. Seek a seconder. Councillor McGuinness, thank you. Wish to any questions, councillors? If not, you wish to speak to your motion, councillor? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? Not, we put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 10, business arising. There is one item that we discussed last meeting, which will be dealt with at item 11.8. CEO, there's no other business arising you're aware of. Councillor McConnell, did you have business arising? No, sorry, thank you. Okay, then we come now to the business of the meeting today, and we come to item 11.1. Councillor McConnell, I turn to you to introduce this item. For those following along, that's page 6 of today's agenda. Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As the appointed councillor for representation on the Northern Rivers Joint Organisation Board, I'd like to introduce the report 2023 Northern Rivers Joint Organisation Board meeting update. Unfortunately, I could not attend this meeting as we had a council budget meeting scheduled the same day, 19 May 2023. I would like to highlight some areas before introducing the motion. The Northern Rivers Joint Organisation is the peak representative group for the 6 local government areas of the Northern Rivers in the region in northern New South Wales, which aims to address matters of regional significance through collaboration with its members and associate members, very similar to our own ComSec. Within the agenda, they did finalise a project related to a business case for the establishment of and operation of a specialist employment pool for the Northern Rivers regions. Like other regions and councils across Australia, they are struggling for specialist staff, and they will seek to share these employees with specialist skills and qualifications. I now move the motion that 1. Council note the Northern Rivers Joint Organisation Ordinary Board meeting minutes for meetings held in February and May 2023, and 2. Council note the activities and initiatives being undertaken by the Northern Rivers Joint Organisation pertaining to the Scenic Rim.
Thank you, councillor. I seek seconder. Councillor West, thank you. Any questions to the report, councillors? Any discussion? If not, councillor, you wish to speak?
Only to say that this is an important cross-border relationship we have with those councils on the northern side of New South Wales. We do not make decisions between the two councils. There is, in fact, a cross-border commissioners, especially on the New South Wales side. So we don't make decisions between the two councils, between the two areas to do stuff. So it's more the sharing of information and ideas, and ensuring that we have a very good relationship with our border councils on the southern side. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? I will just speak briefly and confirm support for Councillor McConnell's observations. The reality is that the northern parts of New South Wales are quite often closer to the significant population centres that we have in southern Queensland, and are very keen to participate in the economic vibrance that we have in southeast Queensland particularly, and have certainly have some different and unique offerings to add to that experience catchment around, as well as some of the challenges we face in common around everything from invasive species to getting access to the right levels of funding and resourcing to properly develop and support our communities. So it is a worthwhile collaboration to participate in, and it will be interesting to see how their exploration of the possibility of a specialist employment pool goes. I know there have been various versions, and there are things, as we've discussed previously with the Local Government Association of Queensland, who have a peak services group who provide some specialist services that councils can't always afford for themselves. They're certainly not councils of our size and similar. So it will be interesting to see further reports on that as it progresses. But commend the motion. And you wish to close, councillor? Okay, we put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Councillors, we move forward to item 11.2. I note Councillor McGuinness, I come to you first.
Thanks, Mayor. I will leave the meeting for this this agenda item 11.2. I am Treasurer of the Harrisville School of Art, which is one of the recipients, suggested recipients of the of a grant. So I think it's only right and proper that I leave the meeting, and as I have prescribed.
Thank you, Councillor McGuinness. Councillor West, you wish to provide a clarifying comment on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for transparency's sake, I just want to mention that I am the patron for the Beaudesert District Orchid and Foliage Society, but I have no part in their day-to-day running, so I will be staying in the room and voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that clarification. Therefore, thank you, Councillor McGuinness. With that, Councillor Enright, I turn to you to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Portfolio Councillor for Community, Arts and Culture, I would like to introduce the report item 11.2, 2023 to 2024 Scenic Rim Community Grants Program Round 1, Minor and Major Grants. The aim of Council's Community Grants Program is to provide assistance to local not-for-profit community groups and organisations who make a positive contribution to the quality of life in the Scenic Rim. The program includes Stream 1 for minor community grants and Stream 2 for major community grants. The maximum amount of funding for minor grants is $5,000 and the maximum amount for funding for major grants is $20,000. I take the report as read, and as such I will now move the motion that 1. Council approve the allocations for minor grants in the amount of $81,109.44 for 27 projects, and for major grants in the amount of $200,550 for 11 projects under the Scenic Rim Community Grants Program for the 2023 to 2024 Round 1, representing a total of $281,659.44 for 38 projects outlined in the tables as detailed in the report. And 2, Council provide relevant feedback and advice to unsuccessful grant applicants to continue building capacity of the community sector.
Thank you, Councillor. I seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell, thank you. Questions to the report before you, councillors? Any discussion to the report? Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Chair. I note that the allocation of the major grants in this round exhausts the funding available and that there is only one major grant round this financial year. So those who are unsuccessful this time around will have to wait until the next financial year, I presume. There were some worthy applicants who did miss out, but no doubt they will benefit from some guidance from within council on how to better address the criteria. And also I note that there's still a significant amount remaining for round 2 of the minor grant applications. I'd just like to ask how much of the remaining $118,340 is likely to be utilised via the in-kind support program. Is there an indication on that?
The CEO, would you be?
The numbers wouldn't be firm yet, but going on last year's figures, that was around the $40,000 mark. So, you know, plus or minus a bit on that would be a fair indication of the in-kind.
I note that the in-kind support recently increased from $1,000 to $1,500, so that may have bearing on the amount available.
That's correct. There were a number of applications that topped out at the 1,000, but not a lot. So yes, it will have an impact, but not a major impact, I would say.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? If not, just speak to your motion, councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned earlier, the aim of Council's Community Grants Program is to provide assistance to local not-for-profit community groups and organisations who make a positive contribution to the quality of life in the Scenic Rim. Whether this funding through minor grants is for Christmas carols in Tambourine Mountain or Beaudesert communities, or defibrillators for Canungra Golf Club or Maroon School of Arts, or solar panels for the Harrisville School of Arts, or funding to assist the Scenic Rim writers write an anthology of local stories, or to assist the Lions Club of Tambourine Mountain deliver their amazing Dancing with Celebrities 2023 program. These funds all provide assistance to these amazing community groups to make a positive contribution to our communities. The major grant funding of over $200,000 provides significant boosts towards major capital investments in either council-owned or community-owned facilities. Whether it is toward the restoration of Beaudesert netball courts, turf renovation for Canungra Owls Soccer Club, or for the shelter to house a historic bullock wagon at Rathdowney Historical Association, these major grants will make a huge difference for our communities. This is another opportunity to thank our community groups and organisations for their wonderful work they do in our community, and trust that these grants will assist enabling these organisations to continue their work in our communities.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, councillors, we put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Would we just recover Councillor McInnes for us? Thank you. And for those following along, we'll be moving to page 34 for item 11.3. And we needed Councillor McInnes back in the room because, I'll give him a moment, but he's about to introduce the report for item 11.3.
Thanks, Mayor. As the portfolio councillor for agribusiness and biodiversity, I would like to introduce the report when I just find the page so I get the wording exactly right. For the environmental grants 2023-24. I now move that this motion in two parts. One, Council approve the allocations for environment grants to the amount of $155,326.11 for 41 projects under the Environmental Grants Program for 2023-2024 as outlined in the following table. And there's a table there of some 41 projects or recipients of these grants, and they're there. Anyone following it can read each one of those. I don't intend to read all of those out. And number 2, council provide relevant feedback and advice to the unsuccessful grant applicants to continue to build capability in the delivery of environmental projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so they're the 2 recommendations, Mayor.
So you're moving that motion,
I
councillor?
will move that, and if there's any questions, either to myself or to the officers involved, happy to answer them.
Thank you, councillors. I'll seek a seconder first. Councillor West, thank you. Now, any questions to this report, councillors? Councillor McConnell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the portfolio councillor. Can you highlight the successes that have occurred in regards to this program over an extended period? This only deals with 1 year, but this environmental grants has been going for some time now. Would you be able to highlight how this has impacted the biodiversity and reduction in weeds across the region?
Thanks, councillor, for your question. Yes, it's. I think one of the things that's happening here, and this has been, and I'll be corrected, I think it's probably 7 years these environmental grants have been in place, and there is a lot of working in conjunction with river trusts and others on private properties. There's a lot of very bad weed issues around there, whether that be cat's claw, whether it be Chinese elms, and not only the River Trust but from other authorities. And I think we can even do better than what we do there in that way, or maybe some of the others could make sure we know what they're doing. Yeah. And it's lantana infestation is one that's figured highly in a lot of areas, and it's a real problem, health of cattle and just ruining land too around the place. So there's some people, most of these people are very passionate about what they're doing, and it's a number of year projects that they do, and they come back year after year looking for more money, and that's not a criticism. That's a good thing that they only do not big projects each year, and we make sure that they can do that properly, and a lot of weeds in our river systems it's choking them and does a lot of problems to in flood times as well as just taking over and making it killing a lot of trees on there. But happy for any officers to add to it if they'd like to.
Would the principal specialist like to share any additional clarity on this matter? Thank you. The other button.
Thanks, councillor. That's correct. The environmental grants has been operating for several years now. In terms of project success, that is obviously managed through the acquittal process. So we have some success measures around expenditure of those funds. We also receive photo point monitoring, explanations of the project outcomes. But more generally, in terms of what it's achieving, as the councillor mentioned, weeds are one of the biggest risks to our region, to the biodiversity of our region, and a lot of the funds go to supporting those landholders in achieving those positive outcomes. And these are landholders that want to be supported, that need that support in achieving those environmental outcomes. So there's definitely some positives, and definitely some long-term positives that I guess we don't have enough information on due to the trends of change, but there's definitely positive outcomes directly for that landholder, and then also for the environment more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor McConnell, you have a further question?
Through the chair to the councillor again. Can you just confirm there's no restrictions on any of the landholders within the Scenic Rim applying for these grants?
There isn't, to my knowledge. I don't think any of on a blacklist, let's say, of any kind. I think it's open to every landowner or land for wildlife. They work with that considerably. That's an issue for some people, and maybe the officer might like to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor. The program is restricted to Land for Wildlife members. So those members are required to have 1 hectare of remnant vegetation on their property. So current members are eligible, but it's not to say that those landholders that aren't currently in the program and have a hectare of vegetation couldn't then apply to the program, become eligible, and then apply for an environmental grant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, you wish to speak further to your motion, Councillor McGuinness?
No, I'm right. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor Hay?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment that the applications significantly exceeded the amount available. It was very oversubscribed. There were $526,000 worth of applications submitted, of which we've approved $155,326. There appears to remain only around $500 left in that grant funding for the rest of the financial year. I'd just like to comment that it was good to see that at page 38 there is mention of alternative options via other initiatives such as the 1 million tree program for those who have been unsuccessful in this grant round. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? I will just take the opportunity to celebrate. This is a program that's part of that long-term commitment to the whole of the region, across the region in very diverse locations, to securing the biodiversity and the quality of our natural environment, as well as our working environment, both from a tourism potential point of view, as well as for farmland protection and the protection of grazing country from invasive species, which is a constant challenge. And it's worth noting that, councillors, we've also added to that investment for that protection by the approval in this year's budget for additional officers to continue to expand that program and encourage that. And I concur with Councillor Hay. It's great to see the level of interest in trying to deal with this that exceeds our capacity to fund on this occasion, and that's certainly a matter worthy of further consideration in the future. But commend the report and congratulate those community members who are playing this part as landowners so importantly. Councillor McGuinness.
I might just comment on Councillor Hayes' statement there, and it's and I agree with yourself and the Mayor's comments there, but it also, there's some people who do apply for a lot more than what they're physically capable of actually doing, and I think the officers have worked with those people to make sure whatever they're given that they actually can carry that out during the coming 12 months. The last thing we want to see is giving money away where it can't be spent, and so it's I think it's still a valid point you make, but it's congratulate the officers working with the people to actually make sure it's achievable goals.
Thank you, Councillor, for closing. We put to the vote those in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We turn now to page 44 of today's. Before I move on, I just wish to thank the Principal Specialist Biodiversity and Climate Change for a very active role in building and expanding these programs, but also on behalf of council, noting that he's advised that he's moving on after an extended period of time with council to seek other employment that won't be anywhere near as rewarding as being here with us. But we wish you all the best in your endeavours. We know that the role you're taking on will see some continued engagement with us here at Scenic Rim. Thank you for your wonderful efforts over a long period of time. And it's been great to see your professional approach, your wisdom in problem solving, and we will miss your services, but wish you all the best in your future endeavours.
Thank you.
Now we move to page 44. Item 11.4. Councillors, this is the tabling of the council submission to the Shaping SEQ update and the draft South East Queensland Infrastructure Supplement and Regulation Amendment Consultation Paper. There's a very big mouthful. But it's important just in context that this is our response, the official response of council to the public consultation process around the latest draft of the Shaping SEQ update that's been out for public consultation, and there have been community engagement sessions. In this version of the process, the only method for council to make submissions is through that same window of opportunity. As you will see from the matter when it's tabled, council officers have done an excellent job of responding to a range of matters with quite thorough submissions, and they've also, may I add, done it very politely and professionally to call out a number of issues. But I will introduce and move that council endorse the submission on the draft Shaping SEQ update, the draft South East Queensland Infrastructure Supplement and Regulation Amendment Consultation Paper, and provide a copy to the Minister for Planning before 9th of October 2023. I seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell, thank you. Now, councillors, firstly, questions to the report before us? Councillor McConnell.
To you, Mr Mayor, thank you for that introduction. In regards to the submission, obviously we're a little bit disappointed with some of the commentary that's come out with the change in South East Queensland. Considering our size of council surrounded by a large body of bigger councils and the media blitz at the moment of 900,000 new houses coming into South East Queensland, how confident are we of state listening to our, I'll say pleas, I won't say begging, but our pleas to be heard in relation to the employment sector within the Scenic Rim to be able to continue to grow prosperity within the Scenic Rim and not have our new residents coming in over the next 20 years travelling outside to be able to get employment.
Thank you, councillor. I'll take a fair few pieces in that question. But as you know, this is a topic I'm fairly passionate around, and I think it is an important question. Whilst in this report, officers have called out a very properly structured response to a range of items. For us as councillors, the matters you raise are actually the ones for me that go to the impact of the shortcomings in what's happened. This was meant to be a so-called soft touch, light touch review, and certainly I think some of the changes and the introduction of the CEQUIS, the infrastructure statement as a new addition, which still needs more development, so there is opportunity for that to mature, was designed to try to put the complementary map which was missing from the last plan, which was, here's what's expected from a, if you like, residential development, and here's what the map of the infrastructure to support that. That infrastructure map was never really consolidated, try as we might to seek it. What do I think of the prospects of achieving change at this point in time? With 2 years of getting a flat forehead, trying to get some of those matters understood in the current process to get to where we are today, I'm always an eternal optimist, and I'm hoping that by having a submission as well structured as ours is, we can call out the real shortcomings. Perhaps to give you an example of what is one of those oversights, if I may, Councillor, for the first time, this version of the plan actually recognises a concept that we've spoken about a lot, I've spoken about a lot through those processes, about affordable livability. Everybody's so hyped up around affordable housing that they've lost sight of the importance of affordable livability, which is reasonable access to employment, so that you can be active in a community and have employment close at hand, or that you, as a second opportunity, is that you then have reasonable access to public transport if you must have to commute to employment. Neither of those opportunities comes our way out of the version of the draft that is now on the table. And those matters are called out very strongly. We have a very powerful opportunity in this region, in the Brommelton State Development Area, that has long been mooted as the opportunity for literally thousands of jobs. We've seen some promising interest in that over recent time, and some businesses that have moved there and some new businesses announcing they want to be there. But it needs proper investment from the state to activate those local jobs. And whilst talking about affordable livability, sadly, the reality is that for Scenic Rim, the current proposed plan and the current proposed sequence ignore any of the opportunities for our region to participate in those by not giving us the activation for local jobs, and then doing more than that, actually identifying that they're going to propose a new version of an industrial development area to our north in part of Logan, which would simply push our opportunities even further down the track, dare I say, robbing, I think, potentially a whole generation of those opportunities. That has significant impacts for the community. It certainly has impacts for us as a council also, to be able to have the proper mix of growth, to be able to support a balanced and effective social fabric as a community. So yes, I am fairly concerned that our voice still will not be heard, because it seems when you read this plan, the focus is really on the highly urbanised neighbours to the north, the maximised usage of existing infrastructure in those urbanised areas, and quite frankly, leaving a region like ours to fend for itself. And the risk in that is that we will see the majority of another generation of children have to leave the region for employment. It is a reality that the majority of an increasing number, we can accommodate people who want to live here, but an increasing number of them will join the already 40% who commute out each day for employment. And that deprives them of participating as a family at a time where social fabric is under threat. I see that as one of the great failures of what the state are proposing in this current approach for our region, that they will increasingly subject us to the risks of social fabric failure that our urban neighbours already experience, and we will not have the capacity to deal with that, and the state won't have the capacity to solve it once they've created it. I'll calm down a moment. I hope that was a fulsome answer for you, Councillor.
I think it was, and I think everyone around this table shares those same sentiments. And as you said, the eloquence that the staff put in the in the response is exceptional. But I still think we need to highlight that it doesn't help us as a region to maintain a growth that's necessary to support the residents. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I agree. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. I wonder if a question through you to the CEO, or as you consider appropriate, whether it's worth providing a summary of the items outlined in the report that will make up our submission.
Thank you, councillor. Perhaps, CEO, we turn to the officers. Thank you. We do have some very capable officers with us, and welcome today. Thank you for your work thus far in this process. And over to you. Use the right-hand button.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I can quickly just run through what the cover letter of the submission says, and then there's a lot of detail in the back in terms of how the plan can be changed to support those key aspects. So Council's submission focuses on Bromwellton not being supported to realise its potential for employment in the region, and then also the infrastructure planning not being there for residents in the future to have that livable environment. So we say that the Shaping SEQ doesn't recognise the existing opportunities for development to support the jobs in the SDA, and the long-term view that's applied is also in conflict with the identification of the area as a recycling enterprise precinct, because the waste strategy that Queensland's recently prepared has short-term targets that need to be achieved within 5, 10 and 15 years. So there's a conflict there. The amendments to the planning regulation that looks to support the sustainable growth of rural towns and villages is supported. However, we would like some assurance that the existing opportunities that are available to use the township zone in the regional plan remain in effect. We would support the urban footprint expansion that's proposed in Harrisville. That is about 50 hectares of land, and that could supply between 50 and 70 additional dwellings there to support the sustainability of Harrisville as an important township in our region. Like the Mayor said, the draft Shaping SEQ places an emphasis on affordable living. However, the provision of strategic region shaping infrastructure is critical for the Scenic Rim to realise this potential. We have a dwelling supply benchmark of 8,000 additional dwellings between 2021 and 2046. And we also need the potential of Bromwellton to be realised as a state significant industrial and employment area, and the primary driver of growth within the region to achieve those employment and dwelling supply benchmarks that are put on us. In that regard, Council would consider that the delivery of the Bromwellton North-South Arterial Road is critical, and the Salisbury to Beaudesert Rail Link projects are crucial for the achievement of those outcomes. We're also advocating for other regional infrastructure upgrades that would support connectivity to other parts of the region in SEQ and livability in our region, including the regional traffic solution or bypass for the Canungra Township, a Cook Road bypass at Gallery Walk, the upgrade of the Colson Crossing, and further improvements to enhance the efficiency of the Mount Lindsay Highway. And importantly, all this is essential for the achievement of the desired outcomes for the Western sub-region that's Shaping SEQ, and the efficient movement of athletes and spectators in the 2032 Brisbane Paralympic and Olympic Games. We also make the point that the provision of trunk infrastructure continues to be a significant challenge for Council, and the trunk infrastructure funding framework needs to fairly reflect the cost impact of local government in supporting the objectives of the Shaping SEQ. And to do this, a review of the cap charges framework and identification of alternative financing models needed. The community engagement and awareness campaign that the Queensland Government has started to increase community understanding of the housing needs of the growing population and advancing the concept of gentle density is supported. However, this campaign needs to demarcate the responsibilities of local and state government in delivering the desired planned outcomes. Finally, the CEQUIS does provide the opportunity, so that's the draft infrastructure supplement, sorry. It does provide the opportunity to identify infrastructure considerations that support the unique growth needs of each Shaping SEQ sub-region and LGA. And as a region comprising dispersed settlements with limited employment and further education opportunities, our region would greatly benefit from investment in tertiary education facilities and TAFE, including a country university campus. So investment in local education and training facilities supports the growth of a skilled workforce and improves self-containment and the retention of younger people living in our region. Lastly, the Scenic Rim is well known for leading the way in innovative agribusiness and agritourism ventures, and the local industries that thrive under these environments need to be supported by infrastructure that enables business development opportunities and strong industry collaboration. So the CEQUIS presents an opportunity to identify and plan for investment in government business hubs to enhance local employment opportunities for skilled workers in these industries. In our view, Beaudesert and Boonah are well positioned to house regional offices for Queensland government departments such as the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries to support the achievement of shared goals for the growth of these industries. We also advocate for stronger collaboration with the Queensland Government in planning for infrastructure such as hospitals, education facilities and emergency service facilities so that these services are provided in alignment with the needs and expectations of the growing expectation.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions, councillors? Any further discussion? Councillors, Councillor Hay, and then you, Councillor West.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to comment on a couple of the items in the proposed or the draft response. It's good to see some of the constrained land being recommended to be removed from the urban footprint, particularly those bits hanging off the western escarpment on Tambourine Mountain. That will reduce some of the angst on the mountain as to what potential development could occur there. I'd also like to say that as far as it goes, the proposed shaping SEQ plan is silent on some of the major things that impact on the livability and amenity of those who already live in the region, let alone the proposed future growth. For example, the proposed 1,000 dwellings at Glen Eagle by 2046. There are two specific things I'd like to mention. One is the fact that Canungra continues to grow, yet it has an inadequate transport route through the town. It's heavily congested, yet there's further and further subdivision and development there. And of an even greater concern, going into a period of what's expected to be drought, is that there is no plan for a sustainable and permanent water supply commitment for Canungra, yet there's significant increased growth in that area. I don't personally think it's sustainable to truck water in. It's environmentally problematic to use trucks and increase emissions to provide water to a township. And the Cook Road bypass, which is mentioned on page 68 of the agenda, it's mooted there that it's basically a method of removing traffic flow from Gallery Walk, which is all about tourism. One thing that's been missed in the requested change at item 7 is that Gallery Walk is at present the one access road for the existing locals, and the increase in tourism visitation numbers just clogs up that area significantly. Now, Cook Road bypass has been mooted for as long as I can remember. I don't know if anybody can remember how long it's been on the books for, but it's a jolly long time, and there's nothing in the near future indicating that that's going to happen. Again, it's not all about tourism, it's about amenity and livability for those who already reside and are ratepayers in the region. And that point seems to have been forgotten somewhat in the plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Further comments? Councillor West, you're waiting.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is a very concise and articulate submission, but I'm just wondering about the thoughts. And I know all of us have probably had put in a submission and talked to the planners when they were here. Would it be appropriate for us as a council group, as an elected member group, to put a further submission in that just perhaps elaborates on the community side of things?
Thank you, Councillor. Perhaps I can respond to that. Councillors, clearly we're dealing with the formal submission of council, and As you may have guessed, I've thought fairly long and hard, and a lot of what I've articulated today has come straight out of some potential draft. And certainly when we finish dealing with this matter, just from a point of visibility for the public and so as not to confuse the processes of council, I would be keen for the possibility of taking a submission or a letter from councillors signed by all councillors forward as a private submission, if that would be the case, rather than an endorsed submission of council. It would be, for me, it's about, I think the officers have done a great job here about articulating at the technical and physical level what the changes would be. For us, the conversation is on behalf of the community about the true long-term impact. What that does to social fabric and otherwise is really important for us to call out as an overarching comment, and I'm certainly very keen that we pursue that path, and if other councillors wish to, we will do that on a voluntary basis, but not by resolution of council, just so we don't confuse the process from a technical point of view. Council, I would suggest if we progress down that path that we would share that as an open letter with our community as well. Thank you for that. Any further comments, councillors? If not, proceed to speak to the motion. I'll speak very briefly now in support of it. Clearly, this is an important submission. It's an important process, whilst sometimes documents like this are seen as a bit of policy ho-hum, political hubris at a state level. This, in fact, is very important because it has the infrastructure supplement attached to us, and that will very much dictate the investment process over the next 10 years and the indication of those priorities. It's extremely concerning, as we've discussed today, that some critical issues vital to the long-term sustainability and performance of our local community and our social fabric have not been properly recognised or respected in the process to date. And in my view, we've been treated as second-class citizens compared to the urban corridors to our north and east in this document and in this process so far. And it may well be that the state says they're struggling for funds. Well, guess what? We're all struggling for funds. Council has to find a way to service all of our communities, and we, as citizens of South East Queensland, all I ask for, and the reason I'm supporting this, putting forward and supporting this submission, is that we get treated with some equitable respect to the rest of South East Queensland through this process and not left behind. I commend the motion. Anyone wishing to speak against? Speak additionally? Councillor McColl.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I concur with your thoughts. It's important that us as councillors do have a voice both through council and individually to state, and obviously you're advocating when you're up at state talking to ministers and the Premier about the issues that this will cause if we are left behind. And I think it's important that we do voice that and we do advocate hard, and sometimes we do use some forceful language to ensure that we put our residents at the top of our priority, ensure that we're not left behind, and investment does come to the Scenic Rim. So I too endorse the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, I no need to close. I put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you again to the wonderful team of officers who've worked so thoroughly through this. Definitely well commended for that process. Councillors, we move forward to item 11.5, page 88 of today's agenda, and I turn to Councillor Chalk to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can't get over the haircut. Just walked in. It's quite shocking.
We'll stay focused on the agenda for now. We can have some social thoughts later.
Yeah, as Portfolio Councillor for Sport and Recreation, I am pleased to introduce this report, and I'll introduce a motion shortly. This report 11.5 is the Sports Facilities Strategic Review 2023 to 2032. This has been a fair while coming in this term of council that we've been working on this report. This report gives us a really good understanding that was done by Ross Planning of the current state and condition of our sports infrastructure, a council-owned sports infrastructure in our region. This is probably a starting point, is to understand what we had in our region, and there's already works underway with other reviews and strategic planning for our entire region around sport and recreation, which is really encouraging and gives us a real path forward in how we can invest in our sports, which is something that's really important to us councillors and our community and this council going forward. So it's probably important to note that this is a sort of working document. It gives us a starting point, as I said, and it'll be reviewed regularly, and it'll work in conjunction with other works being undertaken so far. So I'll take the report as being read, and I'll move on. I'll move on to the recommendation, and it's in two parts. Recommendation number 1, Council endorse the draft Sports Facility Strategic Review 2023 to 2032, and number 2, the draft Sports Facilities Strategic Review 2023 to 2032 inform the development of an updated Scenic Rim Sports and Recreational Plan.
Thank you, Councillor. I seek a seconder. Councillor McConnell, thank you. Now, questions to the report, councillors? Councillor McConnell?
Through the chair to the portfolio councillor, where are we standing at the moment with our sporting facilities? You know, we've read the report, but realistically, are we behind on target or ahead of where our community believes we should be?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McConnell, for that question. It's probably fair to say that we're behind. We've got some challenges with our location in South East Queensland, as said before. We're a relatively small council, and a lot of the competitions that our sports groups compete in are with major centres who have the luxury of providing sporting facilities for much larger populations. That was recognised by us councillors and council staff that this work needed to be undertaken to firstly get an understanding of where we're at and what investment was needed to bring facilities up to safe modern standards, and then probably put in place a future direction and a clear path of investment needed over the next 10 years, probably leading into the Olympics in 32, of where the money is best spent to provide that vital sports facilities that our community wants and needs. So I think that might answer the question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chalk. Further questions? Councillor Hay?
Thank you, Chair. To Councillor Chalk. I note on page 91 in the risk summary, under the category and explanation, it states that this risk has impacted this project due to a variety of reasons, including multiple occasions of scope creep, multiple reworks, changes in objectives and pandemic impacts, resulting in negative perception and mixed expectations of the outcome of the review. A failure to include realistic outcomes and capture growth requirements would continue to adversely impact the community. As you stated, this report's been a long time coming, and it seems as though it has been impacted by a variety of mixed messaging earlier on, and what have we learnt moving forward from that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hay. Yeah, this was undertaken early in this term of council, and it was right in the midst of COVID, which meant meeting sporting organisations was quite difficult. We had council staff working from home and all over the place, so I think that probably deserves a little bit of leniency for that reason. It was quite hard to bring everyone together. As far as the scope goes, I think it was quite confusing because there wasn't a basis to work from. It was really a discovery phase where we had to go out and actually had to find the information and find where everything was at, find the facilities that we did have responsibility for, and do a proper assessment of their condition and what needed to be done, and put some probably actual facts behind and some dollar figures around what the investment is needed to move forward. So it has been frustrating, and I'm sure Scott's here as well, and he'd be very frustrated by how long it's taken. But we have moved a fair way since that point. We've got through our budget processes and other processes, we've actually employed a staff member specifically to deal with this, which we didn't have before. It was being done by a guy with a lot of other things on his plate. So the work has already been commenced to make this a priority of council. Us councillors ourselves have put actual dollars in budgets to tackle this problem and invest in infrastructure like lighting, which we're already seeing come to fruition. So whilst this review has taken us time, we have actually been working in other ways to progress the sports in this region, and we've also identified the Otium work, which is another consulting company who are looking at a larger picture about sports in the region, not so much infrastructure that's council owned, but all sports, even if not on council land, to get us a clear picture of how we're situated now and a plan forward about where we want to get to in the next 10 years. So I think, yes, it has taken us time, but it's been a probably worthy journey to be on. And it's an exciting point right now to endorse this and move on to other plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further question, Councillor McColl?
Yeah, to Councillor Chook, if I can, would you say that some of the, I think it was scope creep was due to understanding the facilities, but also who was using it, how often they were using it, and the fact that during COVID it was hard to understand what use that ground had?
Yes, I think all those points are valid. I think probably been a bit of a piecemeal approach to sports in this region. We've had sports organisations doing their best to provide their sport. It's just that larger picture that hasn't been there, working together to provide facilities that can be shared, and probably making sure that the maintenance and cost of operation is taken into account, and finding sort of the best solution to that. So it's probably been a learning curve for our sports facilities as well, and it's probably a big thanks needs to go out to them with the level of support they've provided and the patience that they've had to have as well on this journey. And I sort of hope they understand that there is going to be better times ahead because of this work that's been done.
Thank you. Councillor McColl?
So it'd be fair to say that this is a starting point for our improvement of sporting infrastructure, teams, and the way we do things within the region?
Yeah, I guess so. It probably wasn't. Probably today's not the starting point. As I've mentioned, we've started already in this term providing that investment, and we've provided that investment for council to have staff that can actually deal with this. This document will now inform other works that are currently underway. So, and this document will be a working document. It won't sit on the shelf. It will be reviewed about the current situation, and some of the things identified in this report have already been taken care of as well. So it's definitely not the starting point. But it's sort of just been on the journey, and it's been active already. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McInnes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. To you, Councillor Chalkor, officers. In this growth that we're moving forward, we know it won't be right. Don't ask me where it'll be wrong, but like every area, we don't get it completely right. Where experts think the growth will be in a certain way, but it'll vary from area to area within our region. And what flexibility, the question is basically, what flexibility have we got to move with that? And also, as emerging sports come, the flexibility to maybe move in that area, in some other areas, have we got sufficient assets there for the new sports, we'll call them, that we don't, coming from left field, that I'm not suggesting you or anyone else knows, none of us know what they are, but there will be changes, and I'd just like to know what flexibility that they've coming up with this report where they see it.
Thank you, Councillor McGuinness. That's a great question. I think there's some rationalisation happening around our region about our facilities and making sure that we're building facilities that have multiple uses, which will really really help us with the cost to provide these facilities. So I won't say gone are the days, but we've got to be careful not to build purpose-built facilities that have no other uses and that aren't flexible. So I think some of the work that's been done now by OTM will identify these future facilities that we need, and where possible we'll make sure that they have a multi-use. So if there is sports that arise that need some point of difference, then hopefully we can facilitate that in the same facilities, which won't be a start from scratch to build. So that's been identified and something that us councillors have talked at length about, and the council officers. So it's something that we're recognised, and we'll be probably very careful not to fall into the trap of trying to build purpose-built facilities for everybody, because we simply cannot afford it. We need to attract more people to major centres just for the cost of build and get that efficiency.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Any additional discussion? Councillor McCollum.
Thank you. Just into discussion, I think it's good that we actually have some sporting groups within the region that aren't afraid to start their own facilities as well. So on the weekend I was out at Coralbin for the mountain bike festival, which held the state championships for, I think it was 4 different disciplines. So it's important that, and we provided a small grant to assist with that activity, and that's now starting to grow. So I think it's important that the sporting strategy also helps encourage other entities to create their own, similar to the Queensland Moto Park and a few other horse facilities or equestrian facilities. The Tambourine Equestrian Group. So we do have a lot of sporting facilities that are outside council ownership, and I think with the work that's been, the excellent work that's been done by the council officers and the consultant to bring this together, will ensure that we have enough around the region to be able to provide for everyone.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor West.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, really just to endorse some of the comments that have already been made, but this is a really excellent beginning to the whole project, and I I'm really very pleased to see this come to fruition. It's taken a long time. It's also very encouraging for our community groups because we have so many of them they're all volunteers. They've been struggling away for many years, doing the very best they can, but this will really help them now knowing which tier they're in and being able to share a lot of ideas. And I probably just because I went to a Moriarty Park meeting last night, but I want to mention the Moriarty Park. They're already taking care of their first E6, which is to develop a new change room. They had a grant and that project is well underway. So a lot of these projects are now starting to get attended to.
Thank you. Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also endorse the comments that have been made by the councillors, particularly also in recognising the facilities that we currently have that won't provide the services into the future. I acknowledge the point of Councillor Chalk that we can't afford to go down the model of individual facilities for individual sports. And I believe what we have delivered, I think this even the previous term of council when we purchased an area to the west of Beaudesert in the Lupton Road area, 32 hectares, that will become the future site of a multi-sport facility, and this will provide for future growth right across the region, but also will provide opportunities for multi-sport sharing, which will give greater utilisation of that space given the different sports that run in summer and winter seasons. So I'm delighted that this strategic review has come to council, and I thank the officers for the work that's been done, because it has been a huge load of work to do on top of everything else that happened. I would acknowledge our manager, Scott Osmond, for the work that he delivered in providing this. And I think the fact that we have provided for an additional officer to take us through to the next step is very important. We all understand the importance of sport in the community, and to the Mayor's point earlier about the Shaping SEQ plan of having communities participating in the area that they live, sport is a very important aspect of that.
Thank you, Councillor. If I just maybe take an opportunity, if no one else wishes to add a comment, I would just add a few observations. This is a review, not a plan, so I just think for the clarity for those listening, this isn't the announcement of a plan and a forward budget process at the moment, but I think some of those matters that have been discussed in this review have not just been about the physical aspect, but have also been about the approach and philosophy about how to manage these things in a sustainable way. I think this is the first such comprehensive conversation since amalgamation to pull together that profile of all of the assets in this category across the region. So that is a landmark piece of work. And it highlights some of the complexity of being a magnificent region of townships that are separated and have in history operated as part of different sporting affiliations with their northern or eastern neighbours rather than as a region of one. That complexity will still continue to mean the challenge that we have around multi-tier need for facilities in different parts of the region. I think what this has confronted us with is the reality that having a footprint's really the easy bit. Having a facility that performs well to support strong engagement of multiple generations to maintain that healthy and active lifestyle from children upwards, not just for them to have aspirational sporting opportunities, but also to have that continued engagement as community. Sport plays an important part. It's worth noting that as we've completed this review, there is also a very significant review going on at a wider level across the state about facilities in the lead up to 2032, which this is a vital feed into. This is certainly an important piece of information that will be valuable in supporting some of our arguments towards the review of the SEQ regional plan. and give evidence of the types of facility needs that we have to support a vibrant community. I think it is absolutely imperative to recognise that generally there is great opportunity in nearly every one of our facilities to capitalise on the state and federal commitment to improving the opportunities for female athletes, both at a child stage as well as through to adult, to have proper change rooms and proper ability to confidently and without embarrassment be able to participate in sport. That will be exciting as we move into the planning phase. And also I'm ever hopeful that that thorny beast of the use of school grounds as part of an integrated community approach that happens in many other places can finally be solved, and that we can see investment that gets good utilisation and management as part of our school community and school integrated with the community, giving dynamic, active surveillance of those facilities because they are a living part of the community. All of those things are opportunities that this review starts the conversation for, and the other pieces of work that we have down the track are equally exciting to build from this starting point. But it's been a great experience. I think the maturity of our conversations, councillors, to that the officers have guided us through that recognition of the challenge about what it means to, from a cost modelling point of view, to manage things in a different way has also been helpful, and probably was a bit of that scope creep of thinking differently about footprints. But it's an exciting day. There'll always be opportunities for further updates, but you got to start somewhere. Any further comments? If not, Councillor Chalk, you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything you said just then. This sort of document will assist us in advocating for the SEQ regional plan and the statewide plan as well. And just to probably make sure it's in the context, this was a review of council facilities, and there's a lot more larger work being undertaken because of this initial step we've taken. So if somebody in the community reads this and doesn't see their name, don't panic just yet, because this was a review about council-owned facilities and about where we're at with what we own, and that the further work is being done because from updates we received from this, we've identified that further work was required, and it's already been put in motion. So it is an exciting day to get this out of the way, and I look forward to the journey that we're on now, and to provide better sports facilities for our whole region, even if council's not the provider, but just to make sure that it's available for our community, which is exciting. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? Councillor McColl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Chalk's comments. It's been a long time coming. It was a bit slow at the start due to COVID, but we've finally got there, and I think the report shows where we're at and where we probably need to go, and the following reports and plans and strategies that we're going to need to do to get to 2032 and provide hopefully some facilities that visiting countries will want to come out and train in the beautiful scenic rim rather than a built up smoggy area. So thank you.
I'll wait for feedback on that last comment.
Sorry,
Anyone else?
Did I say that out loud?
Anyone else wishing to speak additionally? Wish to close, Councillor?
I mentioned it earlier about thanking the community sports groups for their participation in this and their patience. So a big thank you to them. Also to our staff at council. Scott's in the room with us today. He sort of been on this journey the whole time, and so thank you very much for all your hard work, and the whole council, and also the council laws, because every single one of us identified the importance in this review and in sports moving forward, and we're all very supportive of the journey. So probably just acknowledge that as a collective council and council laws, we're all very passionate about. So we'll see where it goes, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor. We put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. At 10:34, I'm going to adjourn the meeting for us to return at 5 to 11, so at 10:55, and we'll break for some comfort and brief refreshment. For those in the digital gallery, please join us again, 10:55, and we'll sign out. Welcome back, councillors and officers, and those joining us in the digital gallery. It's for us to continue with today's meeting. We turn to report item 11.6, page 157, for those following along in the published agenda. And I actually turn to Councillor West. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 11.6 is the 2022 to 2023 Infrastructure Capital Works Program delivery. I'd like to introduce this as the portfolio holder for active transport. I take the report as being read, but just before I move the motion, I just want to mention that this report is an overview of the noting that it is the previous financial year delivery status as of August 2023, and it does relate to the following item, the next item, which is 11.7. So the recommendation is that Council note the delivery of the 2022-2023 Infrastructure Capital Works Program. Sorry, I moved that motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Seek a seconder. Councillor Enright, thank you. Questions to the report, councillors? Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the chair, if I can, if we can just get more of a breakdown in regards to the funding for the grants and external funding area. I note there's a total of 47,800,000 and so. A lot of those, as we know, are multi-year projects. Can we just get more of a breakdown, if we can, on those projects and how they're going? As such.
I'll turn to your CEO, decide whether that's best.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor. Within the report, there is an actual breakdown as a table on page 159. As far as the continued delivery of those projects, they're at various stages of delivery. Probably the biggest item within the 47 million, or nearly $48 million, is associated with our ongoing restoration of essential public assets, which is likely to exceed that 27 million that was identified as carryover within this report. There are still a number of projects tied to some of the stimulus packages that were actually rolled out, and a number of those were nearing completion during and will be completed during this first quarter and second quarter of this financial year. I guess that, I'm not entirely sure what additional information you're chasing. We are within the progress of a process of actually providing a detailed report of this financial year's delivery, which includes updates on these projects that are carried forward as well. So, look, I'm hoping that's at a high level answered the majority of your question.
Thank you. And through the chair to the GM again, this is just to confirm that when residents read in the paper about the carry forward, the 47.8 million isn't rate money. It's actually grant and external funding from outside for many multi-year projects.
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions? GM, perhaps just on the same page, because it will come up in as part of the carry forward, the next agenda item. There's a particular note. There's more than $6 million, which will be shown there as a carry forward around fleet. Can you just perhaps, you or the team, just give us some insight about the challenges that we've been experiencing around fleet renewal?
Yes, thank you for the question, Mayor. With regard to fleet, as a number of you may be aware, if you've gone to try and purchase a car in the last number of years, the time delays that can be experienced, same as occurred with yellow plant. The reality of it is some of our yellow plant is quite specialised, and with the number of those factories having issues with delivery of parts and other matters, we've got some items of plant that we have ordered almost 18 months ago that are still yet to arrive. So we've attempted where possible to bring forward the request for tenders and to actually allocate out or order those items of plant. But at this point in time, we're still seeing quite lengthy lead times in delivery.
Thank you for that insight. Further questions, councillors? Councillor Enright?
Thank you, Mayor. A question through you to the CEO as he feels appropriate. There's two projects in there that refer to Selwyn Park, and some of those are to do with car park delivery, which I understand is partially commenced, and also particularly in the aspect of lighting. I just wonder if the CEO have a question regarding the completion of lighting at Selwyn Park.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the General Manager, I imagine, to the Manager.
Yes, thank you, CEO. And through the Chair, I will pass to the Manager of Maintenance and Operations.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Enright. So in regards to those two projects, the car park project for both Selwyn and Coronation Park, we're at the award phase there of that contract, so construction on those projects should be commencing shortly, so that's imminent. And the Selwyn Park lighting, we have, through council funds, upgraded their lighting to exceed the 100 lux level. So that's just recently been completed. So that allows them to play competition football back at Selwyn. And then we're also looking at external grant funding possibilities to also upgrade that facility to be able to play cricket as well. So for that and Coronation Park, and also looking at a grant funding opportunity to light the additional rugby field at Long Road as well. So multiple lighting projects on the go, but for delivery of those two that were identified, we'll be using some grant funding to supplement council funding to deliver those this financial year as well.
Thank you. I'm sure there's more than one or two very excited sporting clubs that are delighted with that outcome.
Thank you. Any further questions to the report? Any? Yes, perhaps. We'll stay away from those comments. Any additional discussion? Just try and stay focused a little while, councillors. Any further discussion? If not, yes, sorry, Councillor Wright.
Just a question regarding the Desert Town Centre redevelopment. There's probably 3 stages that are underway as outlined under the VATV projects, the drainage improvements, the town centre VATV, and the Brisbane Street and Eaglesville Street drainage projects. So I'm just wondering if we can receive an update on those.
Through the Chair, thank you for the question. Look, a more detailed report will be available in upcoming meetings, but at this point in time, we're still at the tender stage with regard to award, or with the view to award to a contractor to provide the delivery of those projects. As you would have noticed and maybe mentioned by me previously, quite a large stockpile of culverts are situated to the north of this building. That's in readiness. As we saw, the lead times on culverts, like the supply of plant and other items, was actually quite significant. I won't go into the detail of how significant. However, once we do have that award of a contract, the majority of the materials are readily available for that work to start. There is also press release to be going out shortly to identify a preliminary notification of a start date somewhere near the end of October. That will certainly be subject to the award conditions within whoever is successful in the tender phase. I'll probably leave the further detail as we are still in a live tender environment.
Thank you. Any
One more, if I may.
further questions?
Further question?
Sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Is there any update on the two bridge projects, Hinchcliffe Bridge at Coralbin and Kengoon Bridge replacement at Kent's Lagoon?
Through the chair, I can answer that. At this point in time, there has been no updated information provided to council. It is envisaged that that is tied up with the federal government's 90-day review of infrastructure. I think I read recently it's around, we're at about day 138 or thereabouts with regard to that review, which certainly a high-level review of that nature certainly has many facets, and I'm not surprised it's taking a little longer to get to an outcome. However, projects like these that are hinged on getting external funding for them to proceed does leave us in that situation where we are reliant on those outcomes to be resolved. So at this point in time, we're being optimistic with the outcome, and given that that they have been recognised as being worthy projects, I would like to think we would be in a position to get a positive outcome. However, until we do, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Is that all, Councillor Knight? Councillor McCollum?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through the chair to the GM, if I could. Just in regards to line 154, the trial for investigation of alternate footpath materials, we allocated a bit of money to have a look at the viability of materials other than concrete, to do a staged approach to the footpath issues around the Scenic Rim. Is there any update on how that's going?
Yes, there is an update. I'm in the process of receiving an update from officers who have actually gone out to other local governments to see what specifications they have for the provision of footpaths, not only alternative to concrete, but the ways in which they actually can, for want of a better word, stretch the concrete footpath dollar further through different methodologies and how you actually lay and deliver that product. So look, at this point in time, we're looking at another month or so before a briefing will be provided to council on the different options that are available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, discussion. Councillor McCollum.
Just discussion on this one, Mr Mayor. There has been some commentary in the media about our capital works, and if we don't have the capacity to do it, then why is it on the program? And I'd just like to discuss that we have to have more projects than we're capable of, so that if we were to complete them all within 9 months, we wouldn't have anything to do, because we don't have the ability to bring forward money from the next year to complete items this year. Would that be correct?
So I think the notion of discussion, I'm happy for the GM to feed in any advice to the discussion, but what I would observe is there are two pieces to this conversation, Councillor. One is the report we're looking at today is about carry forward. For me, the most important piece for the community, I understand, is on the bottom of page 158, as well as then page 159. The reality is, when we budgeted for last year, we did not have, as we started that year, the incredible, massive, impossible workload for recovery works able to be fully scoped and included in that budget. We also weren't, we also had projects that we were hoping to secure grants for, and we weren't sure we could, so until we'd secured the grants, we couldn't press ahead. So what you see on page 158 is the reality that of ratepayer funded monies, there's just 5.5 million, 5.6 million of carry forward works that couldn't start for various reasons. Some of those are multi-year projects, but I think with the workload that was prioritised to recovering roads and so forth, inevitably some projects had to be retimed. And we've had that discussion throughout the year that was, and it's fitting, therefore, that those things are still important, and that we will see in the carry forward budget that there's a significant set of requests that for the most part have come forward. As for the other components of there, Councillor, we always have a program of work that is identified and approved in the budget, and as we go through review processes throughout the year, if other opportunities or urgent needs come up, that goes through a budget process for us to review every quarter.
Thank you.
If I just continued with that comment, it's also worth noting, councillors, that part of the carry forward is the remaining 5.8 million that is part of that facility that we were able to capture through the work with QTC of refinancing on the back of COVID, and we were able to reduce our cost to borrow, and for the same amount have an additional 15 million of facility, some of which we've used to enable projects like the Tamborine Mountain Library, like the capacity to make gallery walks safer by building a plan to get parking off the street to allow our residents to move through safely. So there's a number of those projects. We've been careful in holding that money to ensure we're using it for the same level of strategic focus, not just as an offset to other capital works, and I think that's still the right way to go. But it's worth calling out that I think that summary table there, and then the one on the following page, highlights that this is actually really, whilst it's challenging for people who don't have good understanding of the financial disciplines we have to live up to, the reality is that we have to go through a transparent process to move things forward from one year to another. It's very common in business that you actually go through those processes. You don't do it quite as vigorously as we have to in local government for that transparency purpose. And this is a very transparent process. This isn't about hoarding away funds of the community. It's actually about grants to rebuild or to build better. And it really should be celebrated that these multi-year projects are going to deliver exceptional value to our communities. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, Councillor West, do you want to introduce or speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, we've had a lot of discussion about this item. I just want to mention that this report forms part of a wider operational document which is used by officers for planning, delivery and reporting on the Capital Works program. We've talked about the summary on page 158, which is very pertinent. And I do just want to mention again, we often hear that we have an underspend of funding that has been allocated. Page 158 really just, and the following page, re-emphasises the challenges here, that funding is often multi-year grant funding, works that are not yet complete and works that have not yet started. So these are the intricacies, I guess, of dealing with the Capital Works program in today's world.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move to item 11.7 on page 167 of today's agenda. And I will introduce this item. Thank you for your assistance with that item. Councillors, as part of those processes we've just been discussing, item 11.7 tables for the meeting today, the 23-24 carry forward budget review. This is a regular and routine process which deals with some of those challenges about having to deal with the accounting process for multi-year projects to carry the funds forward, to deal with those vagaries like we've ordered something and we haven't been able to get it yet, so you've got to carry the funds forward to pay for it when it arrives, and to deal with the continuing to deliver those other priorities that some have commenced and there are continued accounts to come in, and we need to make sure the funding's available to cover those. So I'd like to move on that basis then, move that in accordance with section 169 and 170 brackets 3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council adopt the 2023 to 2024 carry forward budget review as outlined in the 1 revised statement of comprehensive income for 2023-2024 through 2025-2026 inclusive. 2 revised statement of financial position for 2023-24 through 2025-2026 inclusive. 3 revised statement of cash flows for 2023-2024 through 2025-2026 inclusive. 4 revised statement of changes in equity for 2023-2024 through 2025-2026 inclusive. And 5 revised relevant measures of financial sustainability. I seek a seconder. Councillor Enright, thank you. Councillors, I open the floor for questions. Councillor Enright.
Thank you, Mayor. Question through yourself, through to the CEO. On page 171, the report outlines that 2.679 million of operating expenditure is proposed to be carried forward from last financial year into the 2023-2024 financial year, and only $298,000 of operating revenue. Would there have been operating revenue received in the last financial year associated with these operating expenses that are not carried forward into this financial year? If so, what impacts would this have had on the financial results for the last financial year, and to what extent?
Through Ms. Mayor, I'll go to the General Manager.
Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Councillor Enright, for the question. I'll break down in a couple of parts. I guess the $2.679 million in operational carry forward works that's proposed for consideration by Council today. That was fully funded works for the financial year 2022-2023. Fully funded, budgeted for and fully funded in that year. In that regards, you spoke about the carry forward of the $298,000 of revenue. So some of those projects where grant funded, we already received the revenue in the previous financial year, which is 2022-2023. Unfortunately, with the way local governments have to operate under the accrual accounting, you can't recognise that expenditure twice. So we've received the majority of the expenditure, and we've got a balance of $298,000 left to receive to offset those. So the dollars that are associated with it are actually sitting in our bank account. So we're going to, once Council undertakes the necessary expenditure to finalise those projects, those dollars are funded out of Council's retained earnings. In that regard, it's probably important to look at the statements. You're looking at the statement of comprehensive income, which shows the revenue and expenditure. Obviously, with the additional $2.7 million of operational works and only $298,000 of income, it's going to create a deficit. However, it's important to highlight that financial position to the statement of the comprehensive income statement to the statement of financial position, which is the balance sheet, to show that there's no impact in cash, and that our cash balance is maintained because we've budgeted for those works in the previous year. In regards to the operating results as of 2022, 2023, we're currently in a position where we've finalised those statements, but they're yet to be reviewed and signed off by the Queensland Audit Office. Once we get that, that'll be a process that's undertaken. They'll be tabled to council through the ARC for endorsement, and also then tabled to council for adoption along with the annual report. However, I could probably, the indicative results from 2022, 2023 indicated that the year finished off with about a surplus of 6.4 million. Which in most parts, I guess when we break down the analysis of it, we received a number of grant payments right at the cusp of the end of the financial year, right in June. And that included pretty much 99.9% of our financial assistance grant payment, which is about 4.6 million. And we also sort of had some flood damage works associated that was also paid, where the previous expenditure was the previous year from last year as well. In addition to that, we received another waste levy advance payment for the 2026-27 financial year. And the rest of the amount of that $6.4 million is operational underspend, on which part the 2.69 million this relates to the underspend in operating from that year. So I guess the important part is to say that the $2.679 million has been is accounted for and budgeted for in council in the previous budget. And it's important to know that this carry forward budget, it's really just that. It's impacting the carry forward budget from previous years of projects that have not yet completed and are reportable as per the operational plan, or grant related projects that are requiring finalisation. Hopefully that long-winded answer answered your question.
Yes, thank you. That's very good.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Hay.
Thank you, through the Chair to the CEO. Following on from Councillor Enright's question, and I refer to the paragraph 3 of the executive summary at page 171 of the agenda. It's mentioned there, following on from the figures that have just been discussed, that the effect on council's operating surplus ratio is a reduction from positive 0.4% to negative 2.0%, which is now below the minimum target of 0% as per the Local Government Regulation 2012. Are there any consequences for council falling below that minimum target set by the government?
Go to the General Manager, Councillor.
Thanks, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hay, for that question. I guess, this is one of the measures of relevant financial sustainability. And when Council adopted the original budget, there was a modest surplus of about 487,000. The impact of this carry forward budget results in a deficit now of 2.31 million. Which basically means, as I said before, we're spending more dollars in expenditure as we're receiving income for that comprehensive financial year. So I guess the impact from on council, it depends on, as of when we come 30th of June, we may get another influx of payments that turn that $2 million deficit into another operating surplus, because we get an extra influx of prepayments for the 24-25 financial year. Or, as the Mayor indicated, during this current financial year, as we review and amend the budget, council, that position may or may not change as well. So it's really indicative. If you recall from last year's budget, we certainly didn't forecast for a $6.4 million operating surplus, and that was beyond our control in terms of how that occurred. But it was just some late payments of grants that impacted that result.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Any additional discussion? I just would make the comment, obviously carry forward budgets, for those listening in, it's important to understand a lot of the conversation we've had in this section has been around the operating expenditure and revenue part of the carry forward budget. And in the prior matter, we talked about a number of aspects of the capital carry forward budget. Again, both of those are dealt with slightly differently, and they're required to be dealt with differently from good accounting practice. And I think the important pieces that have been highlighted is there's a significant, whilst there have been challenges about the timing of things, one of the patterns of behaviour that we have noticed from other levels of government is that to suit their purposes, they do like to pay things like financial assistance grants right at the end of the financial year, which suits their books, but then we have to go through the process of accessing that in the following year to actually where it's meant to be allocated for us to use for operating expenses, as one example. And it just makes that little bit of a hiccup through our accounting processes. But it's one of those joys of we're still thankful for the funds. For anyone listening from other levels of government, we're always happy to receive appropriate grants to help our community. So please, we're not ungrateful, and we'll deal with the vagaries of shifting it from the end of one year into the next if you keep giving us the money. Thank you. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, councillors, I'll just speak briefly. Obviously, we have a motion before us to identify, recognise and approve the carry forward budget for this year. It's clearly been a lot of discussion around the quantums that are in there and the reasons why they are the way they are. It's been a really comprehensive piece of work, and the tables that are there, I urge people to read through them in the complete report. They're quite detailed in the way they address those issues, and I congratulate the team for the thoughtfulness in considering those matters and properly assessing which matters should be carried forward and some indeed that aren't. So thank you for that, and I commend the report. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We move forward now to the monthly financial report, which commences on page, thank you for your assistance, on page 203 of today's agenda. And I just get councillors, obviously this is part of our normal monthly reporting process. And I move that Council receive the unaudited financial statements for the period ended 31st of August 2023 for the financial year 2022-23. Seek a seconder. Councillor Chalk, thank you. Open the floor for questions, councillors, and the GM has indicated he is available and excited to assist with answers. Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question on notice from the 22nd of August was in relation to the borrowings and the difference between 39.3 million in the original budget and the 47.4 in the actuals. If the GM could give us an explanation, although it is on page 207 as the last dot point.
Thank you, councillor. GM.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thanks to Councillor McConnell for the question. Hopefully I can provide the summary now. You'd recall in the June 2023 monthly financial report, the borrowings were split up into current and non-current loans. I guess the current component as of June 2023, there was an amount of 4.172 million and non-current of 43.263 million. Which combined is about 47.44 million. And then in the July 2023 monthly financial report, there's a whole amount of $47.44 million contained in non-current, which is basically the current and non-current combined. Now, the practice of splitting that into current and non-current, it's generally effective as of June. So the amount, it won't necessarily change. It won't be split up into the two amounts until probably June, same time June next year. The other query is, why is the amount still the same from June as in July as in August? That's because we actually haven't, as of end of June, that was our outstanding total borrowings all up. We haven't actually effected any repayments yet. Repayments through QTC are done on a quarterly basis. So a payment will be done mid-September, and then September you'll see that balance decrease due to the repayment of the borrowings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions? Councillor Enright?
Questions through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. Just following on from that clarification, would it be possible to outline the difference between current and non-current, particularly pertaining to the timelines that I understand they operate under?
Thank you, Councillor Enright. Effectively, current is what's the amount payable within the current 12 months within the financial year. Non-current is beyond the financial year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Any further discussion? If not, councillors, we have before us, I'll speak to the motion, we have before us the monthly financial report for August 2023. It clearly outlines a number of movements. It identifies the first half year collection of rates as part of the revenue statement. So the surplus that's showing there at the moment shows that amount in there, but obviously then that gets consumed over the next months and is replenished with the second half year contribution. We've talked a lot about the movements in capital and the timing so early in the year, about the timing of both moving forward with projects and needing the carry forward budgets to cover the cost of some of those works that have continued, and that will now happen over the next round of reporting, and we'll see a much clearer picture after that time. I commend the report to the meeting today. Anyone wishing to speak against? Speak additionally? Put the motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I turn to Councillor McConnell for item 11.9 on page 218 of today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As one of the appointed councillors for representation on the Scenic Rim Regional Council Audit and Risk Committee, I'd like to introduce the report Annual Internal Audit Plan 2023 to 2024. I take the report as read. I now move the motion that Council approve the Annual Internal Audit Plan 2023 to 2024.
Seek a seconder. Councillor Enright, thank you. Questions to this report, councillors? We have been joined by the Principal Specialist Internal Audit and Improvement. If you seek guidance. No questions? Yes, Councillor McConnell.
Just more of a probably discussion and question. The Audit and Risk Committee is a requirement of council. It's not something that we just do ourselves. There is the Local Government Regulation 2012 Section 207 requires an internal audit, and it is set up as per our regulations. And part of the internal audit requirements is that we prepare an internal audit plan and carry it out, and that can be seen on page. Oh, sorry, next one back. Page 229, which is set out. And although it shows only 115 days, it does go on later to show why it's 115 days. Would the specialist be able to provide some input on the construction of the internal plan for this financial year?
Thank you. Through your CEO.
Oh, through the CEO, through the Mayor, sorry.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone. So, there's a process that I work through where I try to identify potential audits that can be conducted. I consult with the General Manager Group as well as some other officers. I look at what my peers at other organisations are doing as well. From that, I then apply some scoring and some ranking with consideration to council's risks and council's circumstances. And through that try to build up a picture of where those priorities are going to lie and then look at which of those topics or areas might overlap with other initiatives that are already in progress. So where the organisation is already working on something, then perhaps there's an opportunity to work in parallel with that, or in other circumstances it's better to allow that to complete and then come and look at a settled, established process in the future. So that helps guide the timing between the years. I then overlay, just as another element to it, trying to spread myself across the organisation so that there's visibility in a proactive way of the internal audit function across the different portfolios, which helps to ensure that I've got understanding of the different risks that might be emerging in different parts of the organisation, and in a small way encourages staff to be conscious of policies and controls and to be compliant with what they're doing as well. So through all of that, that leads to the plan. For the current year, there was quite a bit of discussion, constructively, appropriately, in the Audit Committee meeting back in June, looking to challenge some of my thinking on those priorities, talking about particularly areas where there was work in progress, where the organisation knew it needed to improve, and whether that was valuable or better to wait. I then made some adjustments to the plan and brought it back, and that's led to what we are considering today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? If not, any additional discussion? Thank you. Councillor Hay.
Thank you. Through the chair to the CEO or the officer. On page 231 is the breakdown of the strategic internal audit plan for multiple years. I note that the area that is receiving the most attention this year is customer and regional prosperity reviews. Was there anything that has come out of previous discussions that led to a focus on those particular areas? For example, development assessment and regulatory processes? Or was it the luck of the draw?
It wasn't really down to luck, though. It was a little bit of just how things had played out, particularly with the plan in the previous year. So development assessment was a topic that I had in mind and was included in the prior year plan. But due to other priorities last year, it meant that I didn't get to that, which shifted it back into this year. Two topics emerged later in the planning cycle here, the regulatory one and the outgoing grants management. Both of those were really brought to the fore because of work that the Queensland Audit Office had done and published reports encouraging organisations to look at their views on maturity and their suggestions. And I think I'd be foolish not to borrow and learn from what that organisation puts out there. So that brought a couple of topics up that may have perhaps been, well, they were in my out years a little bit further. So that did mean that the plan is a little unbalanced, but customer and regional prosperity hadn't been examined much in earlier years. So this is slightly a rebalancing for those other years as well.
Thank you, and I'd like to commend you on the quality of the report. It's extremely comprehensive, and having attended the most recent two Audit and Risk Committee meetings, I'm very impressed at how you managed to do all of this in-house with no intention or budget to engage external resources, so well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, Councillor McConnell, you wish to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it, as alluded by Councillor Hay, it is a well-balanced report, and I think the work that you've done and that you do to process through an internal audit with diligence is to be commended. So thank you for the report, and I endorse it.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against? Seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, councillors, that brings us to the end of the ordinary agenda for today. We do have one more item, item 12.1, that is that we will be closing the meeting for. But before we do, I'll invite Councillor Hay, you have a declaration regarding this matter. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just trying to find my declaration.
We'll give you a moment.
Bear with me.
Your phone open.
Okay, I declare that I have a prescribed conflict of interest in relation to confidential agenda item 12.1, update on the recovery of the costs of appeal MCU 20/050. The first conflict arises as I was the submitter and a party to the legal proceedings, and I am one of two parties against whom which the costs were awarded in the Planning and Environment Court appeal. The second conflict arises as a close associate. Stuart Wright is an office holder of the Tamborine Mountain Progress Association, Inc., which is the other party subject to the recovery of costs by council. I declare my conflict and will leave the meeting, take no part in the discussion of the agenda item or any vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that declaration, and noting you actually can stay for us for the vote to move into confidential, but we'll note then that you leave. So the matter that will be considered in confidential item 12.1, which, as the councillor has just described, is the update recovery of costs of appeal MCU 20/050 SDA Property Nominees Proprietary Limited versus Scenic Rim Regional Council and Oars Planning and Environment Court Appeal number BD 2001 of 2021, 1 to 11 Eagles Retreat Place, Tamborine Mountain. This is closed under section 254J3E of the local government regulation, which permits the meeting to be closed to the public for business relating to, under section E, legal advice obtained by the local government or legal proceedings involving the local government, including, for example, legal proceedings that may be taken by or against the local government. On that basis, councillors, I seek a motion to move into closed session. Councillor McConnell, thank you. Seconder, Councillor West. Any discussion, councillors? I put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. We now move into closed session. For those in the gallery, we will endeavour...
Councillor Hunt, you can vote on that.
No.
Oh, I'm conflicted. No, you're not.
Not on the vote into confidential. Sorry. So just for clarity, it's important... Just to help those who may be watching this, councillor, the vote we were taking was about whether or not to go into confidential, not the matter at hand. So it's a very perfunctory matter. So before we move, I'll just flag to the gallery, as with prior protocols, we'll endeavour to return on the quarter hour. So it's not likely to be at 11:45, but will either be 12 or 12:15, I would estimate. So please bear with us, take a short break, and we shall return. I now close off the broadcast. Councillors, I seek a motion to return into open session. Councillor McConnell, second to Councillor McInnes. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we have one item before us. No, to deal with the resolution of this item. The motion I propose is that council note the progress of the cost recovery for appeal MCU 20-050 SDA Property Nominees Proprietary Limited versus Scenic Rim Regional Council and Oars Planning and Environment Court Appeal number BD 2001 of 2021. Seek a seconder. Councillor West, thank you. I have no further questions, discussion. I don't wish to speak any further to the motion. Anyone seeking leave to speak additionally? If not, we put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Could we just recover Councillor Hay? Welcome back, Councillor. Thank you for joining us. We've resolved to note the progress of that matter at this time. There being no further business items for the agenda today, at 12:01 p.m. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you to those in the digital gallery for joining us today. Thank you to the CEO and the team for preparing comprehensive reports. Thank you, councillors, for vigorous discussion, and we bid you good afternoon. Thank you.